Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Opinion Machine, the show where we talk about all things gaming. My name is Killjoy. Today we're going to be talking about Wave 5 of the Booster Pass for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. And I'm going to be honest, this was a little bit of a letdown for me. All the tracks are somewhere between good and not great. There are no, in my opinion, no great tracks in this pass, which might surprise some people, but we're going to go through them. And we're going to go through them in order. So starting in the Feather Cup, the first track we get is Athens Dash. It's a weird one, this one, because it does visually look very different to the other tour tracks, and I think that's a point in its favour. However, it definitely this one feels very much like it's from the mobile game. Like it doesn't do a lot. A lot of the track feels very wide, and it's in a weird place for me. I'm not sure how I feel about this one. I think this one's just very middling. And I think out of all the tour tracks, it's better than some, but it's not as good as some of the others. And I think this is... I'm really starting to feel that burnout on these tour tracks. They are really starting to blend into one. And I think Athens, unfortunately, had this come out earlier, I think I would like it more. But at this point, I just look forward to the other tracks in the pack rather than the tour one. So this one is very okay. It's a very middle-of-the-road track. Looks nice, but that's about it. The track itself is just isn't particularly memorable. So it's not a track that I'm going to be spending a lot of time playing on. Like, if it comes up, cool, but I'm not going to pick it. That's kind of how I feel about it. Then after that, we had Daisy Cruiser. Now, I'm going to be perfectly honest. This was a track I used to really like, and I think this is the most dumbed-down version of the track in this pass. And the reason I say that is the table section in this track feels less chaotic. The after you get through the table section, you have to do like a right and then a left, and then you either fall down into the water or you go along normally. That feels a lot easier. It feels like they pulled the walls back a little bit to make those turns easier. You can now go both sides of the ship at the start. You can go through the pool of water. So this track pretty much is very streamlined, and as much as I like this track and remember this track being a lot of fun and chaotic, just unfortunately you turned something that had a lot of decision making into a fairly boring track. Like, if you made the swimming pool into something like a void rather than a swimming pool, figured out something and make it a hole in the ship instead, I think that would, having that everyone drifting around it or taking the difficult path would be more interesting. And I think having the ship be more violent inside where the tables and chairs are would help a lot. And then I think you need to make it so that when you go down into the water, obviously you do go a bit slower, but you are rewarded with items and things when you go down there. So this is probably the biggest disappointment for me, because this track used to be super chaotic, and now it just feels okay. It doesn't feel anything special, unfortunately. So this one, again, very like middle of the road, unfortunately, which is not really what you want when you really, really want to play on a classic track. I just don't think they've done this track any justice. Moving on then, we had the Moonview Highway. This track is getting a lot of hate, and I do kind of get it to some degree, because it is another city track within, when we have all these tour tracks coming over that are also city tracks. But I kind of like it. It's a bit chaotic. I will say I'm disappointed. It feels like there's a lot less traffic on the road. When you get into the city portion of this track, everything's moving at the same speed. It doesn't look like things are crossing lanes and stuff. So again, it feels like a streamlined version of the track. And I think this is what's happening a lot with these ports from Tour. Because a lot of these tracks aren't quite as chaotic. Yes, you have more character, more races and stuff. Like, you've got 12 people. But you're losing a little bit of what made these tracks chaotic. And I think this one specifically is still chaotic, because you have the bob-omb cars. You can like fire shells, blow them up. I do like that. And I like it as a track, but I just don't think it quite has the chaos that I wanted from it, which is what I remember about it, with the fast cars and stuff. But this one's a little bit higher than the other two. I think it's definitely better. I think so far out of this cup, this is the better of the other two, unfortunately. That's because of the disappointment for Daisy Cruiser, and Athens Dash is just very forgettable. And then lastly, we have Squeaky Clean Sprint. Now, this probably is the best track in this pass. It is a good track. And I think theming wise, it's probably one of the best tracks. I love this like real world location, like, shrunk down in a bathroom, same with Ribbon Road. I'd love to see like a living room track or something like that, or another bedroom track. But the only slight on this track that I don't enjoy is it's too short. This track feels really short for something that's actually a really creative track, and that's unfortunate because like it has you going over the sink and then off the sink into the bathtub, then down the hole, out of the drain, avoiding soap and a fan, and then over the toilet, and then back onto the sides, and you go up on the second and third lap and stuff. And I just think it's a bit short, and I would have liked the pipe, maybe the underwater pipe section and drain to be a little bit longer. Maybe the bath section to have a few more obstacles. I'm not going to knock this track too much. I don't think this track. I think this track is really solid, but I don't think it's great. It doesn't. I don't go back to it like some other tracks where I'm like, yeah, this is amazing. It's very close to being there, and I think it just falls short of that. So I do think this is a really solid track. I don't think it's a great track, and I think that's kind of the theme with a lot of these. So those 4 tracks to start with, half and half. Moonview and Squeaky Clean, good. Daisy Cruiser, Athens Dash, not so good. And then we have the Cherry Cup, which starts off with Tour Los Angeles Laps. This is by far the weakest track in the entire pack. This reminds me very much of Tokyo Highway, or whatever the hell it's called, which is by far the most boring track in the game. This is down there with that one. I don't like this track at all. I think it's boring. The music is god-awful. It has nothing going for it, this track. It is just like drive around a beach, drive around like over a stadium, drive through an oil field, which I guess is the most interesting thing. This is like one of the weakest tracks in this pack. There's just not many redeeming features of it. It's just a lot of driving in straight lines and then a few corners and then a glider section. Like, it's just nothing going for it. And a lot of people seem to be saying this track's like decent to okay, and I'm like, no, this is the worst track in the entire pack. This is worse than Athens Dash. Athens Dash at least looks visually quite nice, has a different theme, different aesthetic, the music's better, is a bit more chaotic. This is just bland, and being bland is the worst thing you could possibly be. At least if this track was like god awful, like you'd at least remember it, but like this is just one of those ones that's going to get lost. Like Sydney Sprint is better than this, London Loop is better than this, Berlin is better than this. This is just really, really painfully bad and boring. Sorry, not bad, but boring. It's just like, it's just not interesting at all. Moving on then, we have the Game Boy Advanced Sunset Wilds. Now, I'm going to be honest, I do have a soft spot for the Game Boy Advance tracks in this game, as well as the SNES tracks, and that's purely because I like the fact that they are a bit on the simpler side. For anybody who's new here at playing this game, they're going to find this track quite boring, I think. For me, it reminds me of things like Donut Plains, it reminds me of other tracks out of the SNES game, it reminds me of the other Game Boy Advanced games like Snowland and things, where they are a bit more simplistic. It definitely has visually beautiful track. Yes, it doesn't have the sunset, and I completely understand people being upset about that. Knock those points off for it. For me, I've never played this track before, and I just enjoy it for what it is. I do like a simpler track, you know, and people were like, oh, this is definitely worse than like Tour LA. It's like, no, this has a theme to it. This is like out in the Wild West. There's like mining going on. The music's awesome. Like this is memorable for its theme, even if the track isn't. Whereas LA is just a boring track from start to finish. There's no redeeming feature about that track that's like super memorable. Maybe the oil rig, but Sunset Wilds, like, I like it for what it is. It's not going to be the greatest thing in here, but I appreciate a bit one of these tracks being a bit simpler. It is a shame that because most of the other GBA tracks have got massive blow-ups, or at least feel very distinctly different. Boo Lake is probably the best example of that in the Booster Pass, and this isn't anywhere close to that, but hey, this is more in line with Riverside Park. I mean, Riverside Park I like anyway, but those two tracks are kind of simple, and I enjoy that. I like a simple track combined with a lot of the complicated stuff. I don't know if it should have been now. This should have come earlier, and I think because it's a bit too simple and a bit too easy for this point in the past, but there we go. Next up we have Cooper Cape. I genuinely don't know how to feel about this track because, like, I used to really enjoy it. I still kind of enjoy it, but it's I don't know. I don't like the music on this level because it's kind of like a water park level. That's what it's meant to be going for, this kind of crazy water park level. And I do like it. I'm not saying I don't like it. I just don't know if I think I preferred it when it had the lasers in the tunnel that would shrink you. And, like, again, it feels quite quick. I don't know. I really don't know with this one. This is one of those ones that's very much middle of the road. Like, I have no problem playing on it, and I probably would pick it, but it's not up there. Like, it's just not up there with some of the other tracks for me. And like for example, I'll pick Coconut Moor over this one. I would probably pick what other Wii tracks are in it, not Moonview, because Moonview and this are probably about the same for me. But yeah, there are other Wii tracks I'd pick over this in the game. You know, even Grumble Volcano level I don't necessarily like. I'd pick over this. I think that's just a bit more difficult. But I do like the fact that it's here, and I'm glad that people like this track, and I think it is good. I just don't know if I think it's as good as other people do, unfortunately. And then lastly, we do have a bit more positive here. We have Vancouver Velocity. I actually really like this track. I think it has a really nice design, nice like lighting. It's a different. It feels different. It feels like you're in like snow and stuff, and it has that kind of. It doesn't feel like a lot of the other tour tracks feel that they're all kind of blending into one. So for me personally, this was the best tour track out of this pack. We got one of the worst tour tracks and one of the better tour tracks, I think. And yeah, it's not perfect, but I do like the scenery changes, going onto the ice rink, and there's like like meant to be like an ice, was it like a ice hockey tournament thing like on the wall, you know, and the Shy Guys dancing around, and I think it does a good enough job being what it needs to be, and I like it for what it is. I don't think it's Sydney Sprint's level of good. I think that's still my favourite tour track. But I do think it's good. I think it's a lot of fun, and it is one of those ones that I'd be more than happy to play on. Yeah, overall, I think Nintendo have dropped the ball here a little bit. And I think if you take away one of the tour tracks and put something else in here, I might feel better about it. Like, if you took out Los Angeles and had just another classic track, I'd probably feel better about this pass in general, but Athens Dash, okay. Daisy Cruiser, okay. Moonview Highway, good. Squeaky Clean Sprint, good. Right? So there's 2 okays, 2 goods. Los Angeles Laps, bad or boring. Sunset Wilds, simple, but I still like it. Cooper Cape, good. And then Vancouver Velocity is like decent, right? So you could say, oh, it's fairly consistent, but none of these tracks are great. None of these are like a SNES Mario Circuit. They're not a Waluigi Stadium. They're not some of these other tracks, a Sydney Sprint. Like, none of these are going to top any of the other tracks that have come before it, like Boo Lake, Snowland. What else have we got that's awesome? You know, there's a lot of tracks in the past that are just better than this one currently, and you know, that's just how it is. Sometimes you're going to get tracks that aren't as good, unfortunately. And I think Nintendo really it just feels like they dropped the ball and had too many tour tracks in this in the end. You know, like Choco Mountain, Coconut Mall, better tracks. Ninja Hideaway, better tracks. Shroom Ridge, you know. Mario Circuit 3. Waluigi Pinball. New York Minute's pretty decent. Sydney Sprint. What other ones have we got? Maple Treeway. That's a better Wii track than Cooper Cape, I think. Rainbow Road 3DS. Like, there's just stuff like that. DK Summit. You know, I can keep going on and on and on. But like, there's just so many good tracks in the already. And this is where I think they dropped the ball, honestly. But there we go. I think compared to the other waves, I think this wave is probably... It's not as good as wave 4... Let's think, actually. Wave 4, I think, has better tracks overall in it. And I think wave 2 has better overall tracks. So yeah, maybe slightly less than wave... Either on par with wave 3 or slightly less than wave 3. Probably better than wave 1. Yeah. Maybe overall. It's hard to say. As for the characters in it, like, they're all fine. I don't really care that much. Like, Petey I probably won't use again. He's just a bit, like, makes weird noises. Wiggler's just too big, and it's just hard to see around. And then Kamek's cool, but he just sounds like Toad. So, but there you go. There are my thoughts on Wave 5 of the Booster Pass. I am probably going to do some more videos on this before we get Wave 6. I hope Wave 6 is a significantly better wave than this. And then once we've got to the end of it all, we'll do like a kind of review and do a tier list for it all. And then we need to talk about the tour tracks on their own as well, and whether they're a failure or a success, and all that good stuff. But thank you very much for watching the video as always. If you like the video, hit like. If you want to see more content, then hit subscribe. Links for Facebook and Twitter will be down below in the description as always. And until next video, I will see you then.